Kevin Sidebottom here, speaker, author, and trainer, and I go around and teach sales organizations and leadership teams on how to build trust and influence, grow revenues, and profits. Today, let's talk about how we build trust with people at work. We're working with people about a third of our lives. That's a lot of our lives we're working with people. Well, we have to have trust. And in the different environments, we have to have different levels of trust, right? Whether we're going into a fire with somebody where we have to put our lives in someone's hand, or we're in the military and we're off on a mission. Maybe we're in just an office building for the 8-hour days where we actually have to build trust that something's going to get done and that they'll finish their part. Well, we need to be able to engage trust with everybody that we're working with. Doesn't matter if we're a leader or we're just a team member, we have to make sure we're building trust. Today we're going to talk about a few things on how to communicate well and how that builds trust, and then some things that we can do together to build trust, and one other tidbit that's going to help you become a rock star with your team, the people you work with. Okay? So let's get started. The first thing we need to do is make sure that we're communicating well. And it's part of the trust equation and how I communicate and do my trustworthy training. But we need to make sure that we're communicating well. And here's why. Because we need to communicate to make sure that the message is getting across of what we need to the other people. Otherwise, they're not going to grasp it well, and the product they give us is not going to match what we wanted. Well, not everybody's happy, and trust actually is derailed. What we need to do is make sure that we're communicating effectively. How do we do that? Well, let's first look at what communication is. Well, 90% of it is non-verbal. That's right. It's not about the words we say. It's how we say them, the environments, how we're showing up, the tones, the pace of speech. All these things go into communication. So if we're trying to communicate to people and heavy machinery is going on or bombs are going off, do you think they're going to grasp everything we're telling them? Probably not. We need to make sure when we're communicating with people, it's in a relaxed environment. We also need to show up with the correct face. Now, what I typically tell people is if you can communicate, at least do it on the phone or in person. Try not to communicate every single thing by email. Ever have one of those email chains that go on for hours and it could have taken a 5-minute conversation to resolve everything? Yeah, been there, done that. We need to make sure that we're talking to people. And if we're remote and we're on a video camera or a video conference, turn on your camera, do your hair, so that way when you make a joke, people can actually see your face and know that you're joking. Because if you crack a joke, sometimes people just think you're a jerk if they can't see you. So we need to make sure we're communicating effectively. We need to make sure that the colors we wear, our tones, our pace of speech are lining up with the person that's receiving those things. Because if we don't, guess what's going to happen? Yep, it's just going to go over their head. They're not going to get what we were asking, and communication fails. Well, when communication fails, trust goes down. We need to make sure we're communicating effectively. Okay? Now, what are some other things we can do to build trust? Well, let's do one training or one conference a year that we can do together as a team. Let's make sure that there's a budget there that we can do it together. Maybe it's Operation Adventure or some leadership training. Whatever it is, we need to be taking this together as a team. And afterwards, we need to come back and do a debrief. What did we learn? What is one thing we're taking away from this training that's helped us, or whatever we've done that's going to be one valuable tool? What is some great thing that we learned about somebody else? By doing so, people are going to become closer by working together to complete a task. We need to make sure that we're focused on growing. It's kind of like farming. Now, farming, you need to cultivate the ground, plant your seeds, water it, fertilize it, take out the weeds, and then you can harvest. It's just like trust. We have to make sure that we're growing it well. We need to be putting investments into our teams and the people we work with. So be intentionally learning about them, And when we're doing these debriefs, we do. Now, the other thing I recommend is read a book together. Yeah, that boring thing that's got a whole bunch of words on a piece of paper. I recommend reading books. And now, I'm one of the slowest readers you probably ever meet, but I still get through about 12 books a year. Yeah, that's right. 10 pages a day, 30 days a month. I can get through a 300-page book in a month. Multiply that by 12, that's 12 books a year. Most business books and self-help books are under 300 pages, and they're helpful. Well, you can do that. Now, if you don't want to press your team and you're just getting started on it, do it once a quarter and back it out to see what you got to do to learn with the team. But have that debrief once a week when you're in your conference calls, in your team meetings, to sit down and ask them what they're learning and get their insight, because it'll be helpful. We'll build bonds and trust will cultivate in that discussion. Now, here's the last thing I often recommend. Far too often, organizations will overcommit, underproduce. Whether it's a product or it's timing, whatever it is, they sit there and go, hey, this great thing's going to hit at this date, or this is going to happen, and they miss that date. Well, that erodes trust. Just like when we're talking with team members in our workplace, if we're going to say, hey, we're going to do something by a certain date, and we miss it, trust goes down. What program managers are actually trained to do is add a little bit of float. So if they think it's going to take them a few days to do something, they'll bake in an extra day or so, just so they can typically hit that mark. And when they hit that mark, trust goes up. But what happens if you actually come in a little sooner? Well, you've overachieved. You've undercommitted, overachieved, and now you look like a rock star, and trust goes up. So take that for a grain of salt, but I use it in every interaction. I make sure that I add a little bit of float so that way I'm successful. And I think you'll be too. All right? If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My contact and some links to my trainings are below. If you like the video, hit like, subscribe, share it with somebody that it might add value to. That's why I do these videos. We'll see you next time.